The stars outside the ship's window looked peaceful, like tiny diamonds on a black velvet sky. But peace was far from the minds of the people inside the galactic envoy ship Unity 1. On board, Ambassador James Rourke sat quietly in his seat, reading the final details of his speech. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He was not just any diplomat. He was Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, and today was the most important meeting of his career. The Galactic Council was made up of over 20 advanced alien species, each with their own history, power, and politics. Humanity had only joined 3 years ago, still new, still watched closely. Some species welcomed humans with open arms, while others didn't trust them. The Velthari were one of the oldest and most powerful races in the Council. Tall, insect-like beings with sharp mandibles and glowing eyes, they believed in tradition, control, and strength, and they never liked humans. Today's summit was being held on Zakara, the Velthari homeworld. It was the first time a human diplomat would step onto their soil for an official meeting. The stakes were high, and the whole galaxy was watching. The goal was peace, at least that's what it was supposed to be. As the ship landed on the platform outside the Grand Hall of Councils, Rourke took a deep breath and stood up. His assistant, Lieutenant Sarah Cho, handed him the small black datapad with his notes. "We are ready, sir," she said, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. Rourke gave a small smile. "Let's go make history." The hall was massive, shaped like a dome, with glowing blue lights and silver walls covered in alien symbols. Each council species had their own section. The Velthari sat near the front, their long arms folded, expressions cold and unreadable. Rourke walked calmly to the central platform, his earth-blue ambassador robes flowing behind him. The cameras were rolling. Billions across the galaxy were watching the live stream. He bowed his head in respect, then spoke. "Honored members of the Council, I come today not just as a representative of Earth, but as a believer in peace and cooperation. We may be new among you, but we are here to stay, and we wish to build, not destroy." His voice was steady, his words chosen carefully. As he spoke, some nodded, others remained still. But in the Velthari section, something changed. One of the guards, wearing dark armor with the Velthari crest, moved from his position. It was a small step at first, nothing strange. But then, without warning, he walked forward quickly. Too quickly. Rourke turned just in time to see the armored fist coming toward him. A loud crack echoed through the hall. The punch hit Rourke directly in the side of his head, sending him crashing to the floor. Gasps filled the chamber. The human assistant screamed. Security bots moved. The cameras zoomed in. The guard stood over Rourke's unconscious body, silent and still. The other Velthari guards rushed forward, tackling him, shouting in their clicking language. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates yelled. Others tried to leave. The Earth delegation surrounded the ambassador's body. Blood trickled down his cheek. He wasn't moving. It took 5 minutes to clear the hall, but by then, the footage had already gone viral. Across Earth, people watched in horror as one of their own was struck down on live broadcast. News anchors repeated the scene again and again. A Velthari guard attacks human diplomat. Was it planned? What does this mean for peace? Back in the hall, Lieutenant Cho stood over her fallen boss. Her voice shook as she spoke into the communicator. "This is Unity 1. We need immediate med-evac. Ambassador Rourke is down. I repeat, he's down." The Velthari Council leader, Elder Zar, stepped forward, his long fingers raised in a calming gesture. "This was a mistake," he said in a deep voice. "The guard acted alone. He has been arrested. We apologize for this unfortunate event." Cho's eyes burned with anger. "Unfortunate," she snapped. "He nearly killed our ambassador on your floor, on your planet, during a peace meeting." Zar didn't blink. "The Velthari will investigate fully. We advise patience." Cho didn't reply. She looked down at Rourke again. His breathing was shallow. but still there. She whispered, "Hang in there, sir." On Earth, the president called an emergency meeting with the Defense Council. Military leaders, intelligence officers, and diplomats sat around the long table. The room was tense. "This wasn't just an attack," the president said slowly. "It was a message. Someone wants to push us out of the council. Or worse, they want a war." The defense chief leaned forward. "Ma'am, if we don't respond, we'll look weak. The whole galaxy just saw one of ours get hit like a dog. We need to act." "Not yet," the president said. "First, we find out who ordered the hit." The Galactic Council had long been the governing body of the universe, holding power over hundreds of species, all of whom looked up to it for guidance and order. They had established peace, ensured prosperity, and maintained control. But there was one species they never took seriously: humans. The humans were seen as primitive, barely surviving on their home planet, Earth. Their technology was simple compared to the advanced civilizations across the galaxy, and their capacity for violence had always been limited to internal conflicts. To most, humans were a footnote in the grand scheme of galactic politics. But that was changing, rapidly. Over the past few decades, humanity had made unimaginable leaps in technological development. Their once primitive weapons were now advanced enough to challenge even the oldest and most powerful species. Their technology adapted quickly, sometimes even faster than the Council's best minds could comprehend. Earth, once a backwater planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, was now growing in influence, and its military and scientific accomplishments were drawing attention. The Council, uneasy and fearful of the humans' rapid growth, decided to act. They needed to understand what made humans so resilient, so adaptable. They needed to find out if there was something more beneath the surface, something that could explain their sudden rise. Their first step was clear: examine the humans at the most fundamental level through their DNA. The Council sent a group of elite scientists from various species to Earth, a covert operation designed to study the human genome. The plan was to find flaws, weaknesses, or any genetic anomaly that would make humans more susceptible to their rule. But what they found was not what they expected. When the first test results came back, they were unsettling. The data was not easy to interpret. It didn't match any of the patterns the scientists had seen before. Instead of finding weakness or imperfection, they found something entirely different, something they had never seen in any other species. It was as though humanity's DNA was encoded with something hidden, almost like a weapon in waiting. The code was unlike anything they had encountered in their extensive studies of the galaxy's species. The scientists tried to probe deeper. They focused on the sequences that seemed most unusual, genes that shouldn't have existed. They were encrypted, complex, and nearly impossible to decode. As the team worked through the results, they began to make troubling discoveries. Patterns within the human genome that suggested not just biological traits, but intricate systems, almost like military strategies encoded into their very cells. Their muscles, their bones, even their immune systems appeared to be designed for warfare and survival. It was as though the human body itself had evolved to be a perfect weapon. One of the lead scientists, a Xalithian biologist, studied the sequences for days, unable to grasp what he was looking at. "It's like someone encoded battle strategies into their biology," he said, baffled. "These sequences don't just tell us about their biology. They contain something more. These genes are designed to protect, to fight, to overcome." The Xalithian scientist was not the only one shocked by the discovery. His colleagues, from species across the galaxy, were equally stunned. The Asquari, a species known for their intelligence and technological prowess, were quick to run simulations using the human genetic code. The results were equally confusing. The simulations suggested that the human's biology could adapt rapidly to new threats, changing in response to their environment in ways that no other species could. They could even develop new physical attributes seemingly overnight, depending on what they needed for survival. It was an evolutionary process that seemed to speed up whenever necessary. This was no accident, the scientists realized. It was as though humanity's DNA was specifically designed for constant growth and adaptation, ready to confront any challenge. What was even more frightening was that it wasn't just their biology that was changing, it was their minds as well. The genetic code also appeared to include something that could enhance their intelligence, make them think faster, and solve problems quicker than any species the Council had ever encountered. As the days passed, the scientists' initial curiosity began to turn into fear. They had gone to Earth expecting to find weakness, but they had found something far more terrifying. An entire species designed for survival, combat, and growth, capable of outsmarting even the most advanced alien minds. And no one could explain why or how this had happened. The Council was summoned to discuss the findings. The Xalithian scientist, still visibly shaken, explained his discovery in more detail. These aren't just genetic mutations. These are complex biological weapons, part of an evolutionary process that is still unfolding. It's as though humanity has been genetically designed, not just to survive, but to dominate. One of the more skeptical council members, a Volcran elder, spoke up. Are you suggesting that humans are somehow engineered for war? That they are a weaponized species? The Xalithian scientist nodded gravely. That's exactly what I'm saying. Every part of their biology, every part of their DNA is equipped for war. Their bodies are ready to adapt, to grow stronger, to become whatever they need to survive and conquer. We didn't just find weaknesses. We found an entire race of beings whose very design is a threat to us. The Volcran looked uneasy. His species had long been known for their strength and tenacity, but they were no match for humanity's potential. This is disturbing. We thought we controlled the galaxy, but it seems we've underestimated them. If they can change so rapidly, if their biology is so advanced, how can we stop them? A silence fell over the room as the council members exchanged uncertain glances. The fear was palpable now. For the first time in millennia, they felt vulnerable. The humans, a species once considered beneath them, now represented an unknown force that threatened their control. We have underestimated them for too long, the Xalithian scientist said. Their potential is limitless. We need to act before they realize just how much power they have. But it was too late. The humans had already begun to understand their potential. They knew that the Council had been watching, studying, and attempting to control them. They knew that the galaxy had seen them as nothing more than a nuisance for far too long. And now, with the knowledge of what was hidden within their very DNA, humanity was beginning to awaken something they had only begun to understand. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The humans had been watching, preparing, and soon they would take their place at the table, not as underdogs, but as equals, perhaps even as the most powerful species in the galaxy. And the Council, realizing too late the full extent of their mistake, would soon learn that they had made the gravest of errors. They had not simply underestimated humanity. They had awakened a sleeping giant. The Council, shaken by the revelation of humanity's extraordinary potential, called an emergency session to address the implications of their findings. For eons, they had ruled the galaxy with absolute power, their scientific discoveries and advanced civilizations shaping the course of history. Never before had they faced a threat like this. The realization that humanity's DNA held hidden biological weapons was not just unsettling, it was terrifying. The Xalithian scientist who had first uncovered the extraordinary nature of human biology now stood before the Council again, his expression grim. What we found goes beyond genetic weaponry. It's a form of evolution that we can't comprehend, he began, his voice low and filled with awe. The human genome seems to be designed for one purpose: survival. Not just survival, but rapid adaptation to any threat, no matter how dangerous. They are not like any species we've encountered. The Volcran elder, still deeply disturbed by the implications, interrupted. How can they adapt so quickly? What makes their biology so different from ours? The Xalithian scientist paused, choosing his words carefully. It's not just their biology. It's their entire system of evolution. Their bodies seem to evolve on demand. A threat, a challenge, and their genetic makeup begins to shift. Their brains rewire themselves to find solutions, their muscles grow stronger, and even their immune system learns to fight off new diseases faster than we can react. It's like their biology has a built-in defense mechanism, and it works on a level that we've never seen before. The council was in a state of panic, but one member, a Terran ambassador from Earth who had been listening quietly from the sidelines, spoke up. This isn't just an accident or some strange mutation. What you're seeing is the result of thousands of years of human evolution. Humanity has always been a species of survivors. From the harsh conditions of Earth to their internal struggles, humans have had no choice but to adapt or perish. What you're witnessing now is the culmination of that drive, survival at any cost. The Terran ambassador's words caused a ripple of unease to spread through the council. For so long, humans have been dismissed as weak, but now it seemed that their very nature made them potentially the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They had always been underestimated, but that was about to change. Another scientist, a member of the HFY, voiced the growing fear that everyone was now feeling. What happens if they discover what they're capable of? What if they fully understand the power that's hidden within them? If they activate their potential, there's no telling what they could become. We can't afford to let that happen, said the Volcran elder, his tone stern. We must control them before they realize they can't be controlled. They've already proven they can surprise us. And if they discover what's in their DNA, they might decide to challenge our supremacy. We can't let that happen. The council immediately began to discuss possible strategies for dealing with this new threat. Should they eliminate humanity before they could fully awaken their potential? Or should they try to harness this power for themselves, exploiting humans as a tool to strengthen their own civilizations? The debate raged on, but one thing became clear. Humanity had become the most significant unknown variable in the galaxy. No one knew how far their potential went, and that uncertainty was more dangerous than any weapon the Council had ever faced. Back on Earth, humanity was still largely unaware of the dangers and the galactic focus on their biology. But there were whispers among the highest levels of Earth's government. The Terran ambassador had reported back to his leaders, revealing that the Council had taken a sudden and intense interest in the human race. Earth's leadership, usually focused on the planet's more terrestrial issues, now had to contend with the realization that they were no longer just a small, isolated species on a distant planet. They were on the verge of something much larger, and the galaxy was watching. As Earth's government scrambled to understand the situation, a covert team of human scientists working for the highest levels of the United Nations began to piece together the truth. The DNA scans, the strange genetic markers, they weren't just an anomaly. They were the key to something far more powerful. The scientists discovered that the human genome was filled with dormant sequences that could potentially be triggered into action. Some sequences appeared to control the body's reaction to physical stress, causing rapid healing and muscle growth. Others were linked to enhanced cognitive abilities, allowing humans to solve complex problems in moments. Still, others seemed to control sensory perception, making humans acutely aware of their surroundings and capable of reacting with lightning-fast reflexes. What the human scientists didn't yet know was that this was just the beginning. As they continued to analyze the data, they began to notice patterns in the DNA, patterns that hinted at something even more remarkable. There were signs of interdimensional capabilities, traces of quantum manipulation woven into the human genome. It was as if the very building blocks of their biology had been designed not just for survival on their home planet, but for something much more. The ability to control energy, space, and even time. But these capabilities were dormant, only triggered under the right circumstances. And the more the human scientists investigated, the more they realized that humanity had been set up for something extraordinary. It was as if the entire species had been engineered to rise to the occasion when the time was right. And that time was coming soon. The human leadership, now aware of the growing threat from the Council, realized that they needed to act fast. If they did nothing, they might find themselves at the mercy of more powerful galactic forces. But if they revealed the truth about their DNA, if they fully unleashed their potential, they could change the course of the galaxy forever. As the humans began to unlock the full extent of their power, they realized that they were no longer helpless or insignificant. They were players on a galactic scale, and the rules of the game had just changed. But as they prepared to take their place among the stars, they also knew that the galaxy would not welcome them with open arms. The Council, afraid of what humanity might become, would stop at nothing to keep them in check. But the humans were no longer afraid. They had survived for centuries by adapting, by evolving, and now they had something the galaxy didn't: the power to shape their own destiny. The stage was set for a showdown. The Council had underestimated humanity for too long, and now they were about to see just how wrong they were. And this time, humanity wasn't going to back down. The Council, despite their growing fears, could not ignore the reality that humanity was now a force to be reckoned with. For the first time in their long history of ruling the galaxy, they found themselves questioning their control. They had always held an unshakable position at the top of the galactic hierarchy, making decisions that affected entire civilizations. But now, there was an unknown variable: humanity. And humanity's potential was still a mystery, one that they didn't fully understand but feared all the same. On Earth, the human leadership was in full alert. They had been briefed on the Council's intentions and the genetic discoveries, and while the majority of the world remained unaware of the galactic conflict brewing, a select few within Earth's governments and scientific communities had come to understand the gravity of the situation. Humanity had always been an underdog in the vast galaxy, ignored and dismissed as insignificant. But now they were no longer the weak, isolated species they had once been. The Council had pushed them into a corner, and the only way out was to embrace their true potential. The human scientists, led by a team of geneticists and biologists, had been working day and night, decoding the hidden messages within the human genome. What they had discovered was beyond anything they had expected. The dormant sequences, once thought to be meaningless genetic markers, held the key to unlocking extraordinary abilities. It wasn't just physical prowess or enhanced cognitive abilities. The human's biology could potentially allow them to manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. But the question was, could humanity awaken these capabilities in time to confront the threat of the Council? The answer came sooner than they expected. A breakthrough came during an experiment on a small group of volunteers. Using advanced neurostimulation techniques, the team managed to activate a dormant sequence within their DNA. The results were instantaneous. One of the volunteers, a young woman named Dr. HFY, experienced a dramatic transformation. Her senses heightened to the point where she could perceive the tiniest changes in her environment, her brain processing information at speeds that made even the most advanced artificial intelligences seem slow in comparison. But it didn't stop there. Within hours, she demonstrated enhanced strength, agility, and reflexes. Her body had adapted rapidly, her muscles growing stronger, her bones denser, as if she had been genetically engineered to survive in the harshest conditions. Dr. Ford's transformation was the first clear indication that humanity's potential was far beyond anyone's imagination. The entire team watched in awe as she underwent these changes, her body and mind evolving before their very eyes. But as extraordinary as the results were, there was one major concern. The process was unpredictable. While Dr. Ford's transformation was remarkable, it also left her exhausted and disoriented. The genetic changes were too rapid, too intense for her body to handle all at once. She had no control over what was happening, and the consequences of pushing her limits were still unknown. As news of Dr. Ford's transformation spread, other nations and factions on Earth began to realize what had just been unleashed. The human race had just taken its first step into a new era, an era of unimaginable potential. But there were also questions. What would happen if more people underwent the same process? Would it be possible to control the changes? And perhaps most importantly, how would the rest of the galaxy react? The Council, meanwhile, was not idle. As they observed the rapid advancements on Earth, they recognized the growing threat that humanity posed. They could no longer afford to wait. The humans were becoming too powerful, too unpredictable. The Council sent an emissary to Earth, hoping to negotiate and gain control of the situation before things escalated further. The emissary, a tall and imposing figure from the ancient species of the Teleri, arrived at a secret meeting with Earth's leaders. The Teleri had long been regarded as one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, with vast knowledge of genetic manipulation and warfare. Their emissary, known as Valithor, was a seasoned diplomat, accustomed to handling delicate situations with tact and finesse. But even he could sense the tension in the air. The humans were no longer the docile, primitive species they had once been. They were becoming something much more dangerous. Valithor's opening words were calm, almost patronizing. "We have been monitoring your progress closely, Earth. Your species has always fascinated us, but your recent developments have raised concerns. Your genetics, your potential. This is something we have never seen before. We came here to offer you a place in the Galactic Council, a chance to join us in peace and prosperity." The humans, led by President Naomi Pierce, exchanged wary glances. They knew the Council's offer was not genuine. It was a ploy to control them, to assimilate them into the galaxy's existing power structure. Earth's leaders had no intention of submitting to the will of the Council. They had tasted the power that lay within their own species, and they were not going to give it up so easily. "We're not interested in your offer," President Pierce said firmly, her voice unwavering. "Humanity has been nothing but a pawn in your games for far too long. We have our own destiny to shape now, and we won't let you dictate our future." Valithor's expression darkened. "You misunderstand, Earth. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The power you are awakening is dangerous. You cannot control it, and you certainly cannot survive without our help." The humans knew that this conversation was not a diplomatic exchange. It was a warning. The Council was not offering them peace. They were threatening them. Humanity's newfound abilities were a double-edged sword, and the Council intended to ensure that humans would not use them to disrupt the galactic order. But the humans were ready. They had seen the truth. The Council's offer was nothing more than a facade, a way to coerce them into submission. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were no longer the helpless species they had once been, and they were prepared to fight for their freedom. Valithor's threat loomed over them, but the humans did not back down. Instead, they prepared. They knew that the galaxy's power structure was about to shift, and that the Council's grip on the galaxy would soon be challenged, not just by Earth, but by the entire human race. As the emissary left Earth, the first signs of a galaxy-wide conflict were beginning to emerge. Humanity had awakened something ancient within itself, something the galaxy had never seen before, and the Council's greatest mistake was believing they could control it. The stage was set. The first shots of the conflict would soon be fired, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had risen, and the Council would soon learn just how wrong they had been to underestimate the power of a species that had once been seen as nothing more than a fleeting curiosity. The conflict that had begun as whispers and subtle tensions was now no longer something that could be ignored. On both sides of the galaxy, the stakes had been raised. The Council, with its immense power, had long held dominion over all known species. The humans, once deemed weak and insignificant, had begun to awaken abilities that were not just extraordinary. They were terrifying. It became clear that the galaxy was about to witness a shift of unimaginable proportions, one that would reverberate across the stars. In the aftermath of the Teleri emissary's visit, Earth's leadership began to implement drastic measures to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The first step was the formation of a new covert alliance of Earth's most advanced military and scientific minds. Known as the Terran Directive, this group was tasked with researching the limits of humanity's newly discovered potential. Their goal wasn't just survival. It was to outpace any threat that the galaxy might throw at them. Dr. Aisha Ford, the scientist who had undergone the first successful DNA activation experiment, was now central to the Terran Directive's efforts. Her transformation, once viewed as an isolated event, had become a symbol of humanity's newfound strength. More tests were conducted, more people volunteered, and it became clear humanity was on the brink of unlocking powers that would rival even the most powerful beings in the galaxy. One of the first revelations came when Dr. Ford and her team unlocked an ability that allowed them to manipulate energy. At first, it was small bursts of power, flickering lights and static charges that hummed through the air. But soon, they were able to generate sustained, controlled bursts of energy, enough to power machinery or disarm enemies. This discovery sent ripples through Earth's military network. For the first time, humanity had a weapon that no one in the galaxy had seen before. The implications were endless. But it wasn't just about weapons. Humanity's new abilities were also opening doors to vast technological advances. The manipulation of energy wasn't limited to offensive uses. It also led to breakthroughs in communication and transportation. Scientists discovered that the same techniques could be applied to create instantaneous travel through space, bypassing the limitations of traditional propulsion systems. Humanity, once confined to their homeworld, now had the ability to traverse the stars at speeds that made even the fastest ships in the galaxy look outdated. The Council, still unaware of the full scope of humanity's capabilities, was becoming increasingly alarmed. Earth's sudden advancements were impossible to ignore. Their quiet arrogance was slowly being replaced with fear, and with fear came action. They began to accelerate their own preparations, bolstering their fleets and fortifying their worlds, but they didn't know how to handle what was coming. They could send emissaries, issue threats, and make demands, but nothing could stop the tide of change that was rolling across the galaxy. Despite the growing tension, there were still factions within the galaxy that saw humanity's emergence as an opportunity, rather than a threat. The Vrixians, a technologically advanced but isolated species, reached out to Earth in secret. Their message was clear. They wanted to form an alliance. They had watched the Council's growing apprehension, and they understood that humanity might be the key to breaking free from the Council's dominance. The Vrixians had long suffered under the Council's rule. Although they were far advanced in certain technologies, they had been restricted from pursuing their full potential by the Council's strict regulations. They saw in humanity a kindred spirit, an underdog species that had the potential to break the established order. If they could join forces, they believed they might be able to challenge the Council's reign. The Terran Directive, while cautious, saw the value in such an alliance. After all, they needed every advantage they could get. The Council would not just roll over. A direct conflict with the galactic authorities seemed inevitable, and an alliance with the Vrixians could provide crucial intelligence and resources that might tip the scales in humanity's favor. As the Vrixians made contact, tensions between the Council and Earth continued to rise. The Council's decision was clear. They would not allow humanity to disrupt the established order. They would either subdue Earth or annihilate it. Humanity, they believed, was a threat that had to be eradicated before it could fully realize its power. The first strike came without warning. A fleet of Council warships, led by the mighty battlecruiser Obsidian Dawn, entered Earth's solar system. The Council's message was simple: submit to their authority or face extinction. Earth's defenses, though formidable, were still not fully prepared for what the Council had in store. Their only hope was the element of surprise, the first test of humanity's ability to fight back. The Terran Directive, however, had spent months preparing for such an eventuality. They knew that if the Council attacked, it would not be just a military conflict. It would be a battle for the future of the galaxy itself. And so, as the first Council ships entered the solar system, Humanity's counteroffensive began. The humans had developed a new form of weaponry based on their energy manipulation breakthroughs. They called it the stellar barrage, a powerful burst of energy capable of disabling even the most advanced ships. But the weapon had never been tested in battle. Until now. As the Obsidian Dawn and its fleet neared Earth, the Terran military deployed their new weapon. The first shot was fired from Earth's newly constructed orbital defense platforms. A wave of energy surged outward, striking the Council fleet with a force that sent shockwaves across the system. The results were immediate. The first wave of Council ships faltered, their shields buckling under the intense blast. Some ships exploded outright, while others were left floating, disabled, and vulnerable. The Council fleet scrambled to regroup, but the humans were not finished. The Obsidian Dawn, the crown jewel of the Council's fleet, was targeted next. The battle was fierce, with both sides unleashing everything they had. But humanity's new energy weapons proved to be more effective than anyone had expected. The Obsidian Dawn was crippled in a matter of hours, its systems failing one by one as the human weapons continued to rain down upon it. The battle was over quickly, far quicker than the Council had anticipated. Earth's defenses had proven more than a match for the Council's might. But the victory, while sweet, was only the beginning. The battle for the galaxy was far from over. The Council had been wounded, but it was not yet defeated. Humanity had proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. But with that victory came a new set of challenges. The Council would regroup, and more conflicts would come. Humanity had taken its first steps into the galactic stage, but the real war was just beginning. The stage was set for an even greater battle, one where humanity would fight not just for survival, but for their place among the stars. And this time, they would not back down. The galaxy would learn that when humanity fought, they fought to win. The battle between humanity and the Council had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. The victory over the Obsidian Dawn was not just a tactical win, it was a declaration. Humanity was no longer a weak, insignificant species. They had proven that they could stand against the might of the galaxy's most powerful forces. But as the dust settled, the true scope of the conflict became clear. The battle had only been the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's influence was deep-rooted. Humanity had ruffled feathers, and now the galaxy would respond in kind. While Earth celebrated its unexpected victory, there was little time for rest. The Council's retaliation was swift. Within days, reinforcements arrived, and the Council's military forces began to regroup. They were not the type to back down easily, and this defeat would not be forgotten. In fact, it made them more dangerous. They now saw humanity as a legitimate threat, and they would stop at nothing to crush it before it could grow too strong. Behind the scenes, political tensions on Earth began to rise. President Naomi Pierce and the Terran Directive worked tirelessly to maintain unity in the face of the impending war. The victory over the Obsidian Dawn had made humanity bold, but it had also made them a target. Earth's leaders knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. The Council was preparing for their next move, and humanity needed to be ready. As the Council's fleet moved closer, they began to deploy new technologies. Dreadnoughts and warships, the likes of which humanity had never seen. They were larger, stronger, and more advanced. Their weapon systems were more devastating, and their defenses were nearly impenetrable. But humanity had learned much from their first encounter. They had seen the power of energy manipulation, and they had studied the enemy's tactics. The Terran Directive had begun developing new technologies, combining human ingenuity with their new abilities. It was the dawn of a new kind of warfare, one that didn't rely solely on brute force, but on intelligence, strategy, and the very nature of human resilience. Dr. Aisha Ford, who had once been a volunteer in the early experiments, was now one of humanity's most valuable assets. She had become an expert in harnessing and controlling the energy within the human genome. But as the stakes grew higher, she realized that humanity's potential was even greater than anyone had imagined. The dormant genetic code in humans didn't just allow them to manipulate energy. It had the potential to unlock entire new dimensions of power. And while humanity was starting to understand this power, they were still in the early stages of discovery. The Council, ever observant, had detected the changes in Earth's military tactics. Their intelligence reports showed the emergence of new, highly advanced energy weapons, and their spies had uncovered evidence of the humans' genetic breakthroughs. They knew that humanity's rise was no longer something they could ignore or contain. If left unchecked, humanity would soon be able to challenge the Council's entire way of life. The Council was determined to prevent that from happening at all costs. In response, the Council summoned its greatest military minds and scientists. They began to prepare a final strike, a devastating blow meant to cripple humanity's ability to fight back. Their plan was to target the Earth itself, to destroy the planet's infrastructure and weaken its resolve. The human spirit had proven resilient, but the Council believed that no species could withstand the complete destruction of its homeworld. If they could crush Earth's defenses and wipe out their technological advancements, humanity would be forced to surrender. The humans, however, were not blind to the Council's strategy. Earth's leaders knew that the Council would strike hard and fast. They couldn't afford to defend against such an attack in the traditional sense. They had to go on the offensive. The Terran Directive's scientists and engineers had already begun work on a secret weapon, something that could not only defend Earth but could shift the tide of the entire conflict. The project, codenamed Project Genesis, was humanity's most ambitious undertaking yet. It was a weapon designed not just to destroy, but to disrupt the very fabric of space itself, based on the energy manipulation techniques that had first been discovered by Dr. Ford's team. Project Genesis aimed to create a device capable of creating dimensional rifts, portals that could be used to displace enemy ships, weapons, and entire fleets. It was an experimental technology, untested, and its risks were immense. But the humans had no choice. They had to take the risk if they were to survive. As the day of the final confrontation approached, tensions reached a breaking point. The Council had begun its assault, sending fleets to surround Earth, their ships like dark shadows in the void of space. The humans prepared for the worst, knowing that this battle would decide their future. President Pierce, Dr. Ford, and the rest of the Terran Directive's leadership gathered in a secure command center, awaiting the first signs of the enemy's arrival. The attack came swiftly. Waves of Council warships descended on Earth, their weapons systems primed for destruction. The humans were ready. As the first wave of ships neared Earth's orbit, the Genesis device was activated. The ground shook as the massive machine hummed to life, generating an energy pulse that expanded outward into the depths of space. The first rift tore through space like a tear in the fabric of reality itself. It was the most powerful energy surge humanity had ever generated. The rift opened wide enough to swallow entire ships, sending them into alternate dimensions. The rift pulsed, destabilizing the Council's fleets and throwing their formations into chaos. Ships were caught in the rift, displaced to distant corners of the galaxy. Some disappeared entirely, lost to the unknown. The Council was stunned. This was not something they had ever anticipated. Their fleets, which had been poised to annihilate Earth, were now scattered and disrupted. Humanity's new weapon had shifted the balance in ways that even the most advanced alien minds could not comprehend. The Council's fleet was reeling, disoriented, and unprepared for the attack. And the humans weren't done yet. Humanity, now armed with the ability to manipulate space itself, launched a counteroffensive. The Council's ships, caught in disarray, were easy targets. The human military deployed wave after wave of attacks, targeting weakened ships and disabling enemy forces. The tide of the battle was turning in humanity's favor. The Council, despite their vast power, were now on the defensive. President Pierce and Dr. Ford watched from the command center as Earth's forces gained the upper hand. It was a moment they had all dreamed of, but they knew the war was not over. The council would regroup, and another battle would come. But for the first time, humanity stood as equals in a galaxy once dominated by others. They had proven that they were not to be underestimated, and that the future of the galaxy would be shaped by their actions. The battle was far from over, but humanity had made its mark on the galaxy. No longer would they cower in the shadows. No longer would they be the hunted. They had shown the galaxy that when humans fought, they fought to win. And the galaxy would never be the same again.